Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Fritz, and I just want to take some time to talk about my backstory and, how did I get into energy work and spirituality and coming to teach meditation. So I grew up on the East Coast of the United States, just outside of Philadelphia. And in my late teens, I would say I was very lost, depressed, confused, just kind of closed off, disconnected. But I still had despite all that, I had just a little bit of a speck of awareness, kind of just a knowing that there was something more for me. Um, that I had to leave my hometown. I didn't know where I was supposed to go or what I was supposed to do or who I would end up meeting. But that's all I had. I just had this simple knowing. And that knowing essentially took me or led me to Chicago, Illinois. That's where I went for art school. And I was studying fiction writing. That was my major there for a little bit. And while I was there, and we'd have these classes again. The focus was on writing novels, so there's a lot of requirements for reading different books and discussing them in class. And they would say things like, your mind's eye, and I didn't think anything of it at that point in time. Looking back at it, I go, oh, that's interesting. That's kind of amusing that it was kind of a foreshadowing moment or a bit of a precursor that kind of, eventually I would end up at a psychic school in that city of Chicago. Um, and I'll talk about that just in a moment. But at this art school, my roommate, um, he was from California on the West Coast, United States, and we hit it off right away. Became really great friends, and I would say maybe it took him probably into the second semester to open up to me and say, "Hey, I'm into spirituality and energy work," and he's taken some classes on the West Coast, and he's like, "Hey, do you want to go? I found this school, do you want to go get an R rating?" And I thought, you know, and at that point in time, like when I moved there, I was just so open to anything and everything. Living in a city that was very new to me, meeting all different types of people. It was a really awesome time in my life. Um, and so I had no idea what an R reading was. And at that point in time, I wouldn't say I was like heavily into spirituality or anything like that. I grew up in a house that was haunted and I had certain experiences with that. And maybe I can take some time to talk about that another time. But anyway, I was open to this R reading, even having no idea what that even meant. I've never had a psychic reading or anything like that. Um, so we take a train. We end up at this school, and he goes off into a different room to get his reading, and I go into my room to get a reading. And I have maybe three people, if I can remember right, in front of me. So there's like a line of three people, and I'm sitting in front of them. And what appeared there seemed to be like a center chair, someone that was kind of one in charge of the reading, and there was two other people on either side. And I received this reading. It was about, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes of them reading me. And then I had some time for questions. And, the reading was validating. Um, but I was like, I didn't even know this was a thing. And I was just like, all I could think of was, how are you guys doing this? Like, what is this? I didn't know anything about it, but I was incredibly curious and intrigued about how they were doing this. And it turns out this school, they offered classes and trainings, and I was hooked, and I ended up taking meditation classes, Kundalini energy healing classes, a year-long clairvoyant training, and other advanced trainings even after that, a teacher training. um, so that's kind of where I learned you know all the energy work and the meditation. But kind of going a little bit back, so that roommate, um, my roommate in college, he also gave me this book to read. He let me borrow this book. It was called "You Are the Answer." And I started reading this book maybe just before or around the time I was starting to take classes at this psychic school. So again, the book's called "You Are the Answer." It's by Michael Tamara. Um, Go look him up, check him out. Really awesome person. I had the chance to interview him on a podcast before. Um, but that book just it didn't. I didn't even have to finish the entire book. I can't remember what page I got into it, but I started reading a little bit, and that's when I started to spiritually wake up. That's the moment that I started to realize, oh my gosh, I'm not my physical body. I'm actually this spiritual being, and I have a physical body. And that was kind of a big part of my spiritual awakening just from reading that book. So it's a really amazing book. Highly recommend it. Go check it out. Maybe I'll leave a link in the description for that. Um, but yeah, so again, moving forward in time again, I took all these classes and workshops and trainings, and I remember, I had this. It was like a little bit of like a psychic mini class. It was probably the first thing I took there, and I remember my friend and I were at that in that mini class, and I remember the teacher, and she had us close our eyes. And I remember the moment I closed my eyes. I think for most people, you probably close your eyes. The first thing you're just kind of seeing black, and my vision just went completely blood red. I mean, just bright, vivid red. And I was like, "Whoa, what is this? This has never happened to me before." And I was trying, I was letting the teacher know and describing it, and she's like, "Oh, well, your clairvoyance is turning on." I was like, "Oh, okay, interesting." And it was kind of at that moment where I was starting to have these kind of flashbacks to childhood of, when my clairvoyance was actually on. And I completely just forgot about those experiences. Um, I remember once at that point in time, I remembered, when I was younger, I was lying in bed and kind of staring at the ceiling and seeing all these, shapes and colors kind of just above or by the ceiling. I remember there was another time where I was seeing, um, I'll just say, an out of body being kind of flying around the room. So these memories came up, and I was like, oh my gosh, like just completely forgot about that. So my clairvoyance was turning on, and then some of the memories of when, I was clairvoyant as a kid. And, that's what I tend to really find is that most people in their childhood, when they're very young, these abilities are very natural, turned on. But just with society, it's just not very, there's not a lot of um, acceptance or like awareness or understanding of these abilities, and they tend to get disregarded and invalidated, and it could be some just simple judgment or invalidation, and suddenly, the child will start to tune these down or completely off because it just doesn't seem to work well in the family or just in that community that that person was born into and are growing up into. um, and then, eventually over time, you might start to get into spirituality and start to turn these back on. It depends on the family you're born into, essentially, kind of maybe the community that you're involved in and all that. But for me, I had this mini class and it was starting to, just turn back on. So I go through this year-long training, and I had no idea why I was there. I just knew that I had to do this. It was just one of those moments where I knew I was in the right place. I knew I had to take this. I didn't know exactly what it was all about. I knew I was going to work on meditation and clairvoyance. That's about it. Um, and that year was highly transformative for me. The big thing that I really took from it was that I got to, turn on. We all have these different abilities to perceive energy, and the main focus at this school, and what I like to teach, I like to kind of discuss all the different abilities that we have, but the emphasis would be the clairvoyance, the ability to see colors, symbols, mental image pictures, just to see yourself, others in the world clearly and as they are without judgment. um, and the big thing I got out of that training was starting to open up, my third eye, my clairvoyance, and starting to. I remember this one class, and it just dawned on me. It hit me. I had this kind of epiphany of, oh my gosh, this energy that I experienced and recognized that was affecting kind of myself and just different parts of my life wasn't even my energy. And it was a big awakening. And it was just like, wow, this is not, I'm kind of living a bit of a lie. This is not even my energy. And so you're dealing with that, but then going, oh, okay, well, actually, that's a relief. If that's not me, and I thought that was, and I thought that's just the way things were always just going to be, well, now what? Okay, well, I learned that, okay, I can let that go. That's not me. That's a relief. But then who am I? What is my energy like? And that's what I really got out of that training, is that I started to differentiate what my energy is versus, say, other people's energies, my father's or my mother's or this person or that person. And I gained a lot of clarity and certainty about, okay, well, this is my energy. And the more certain I became about my energy, I started to validate it more, embrace it more, and got it more in movement. We all know what it feels like when our energy is stuck and when it's in movement. Um, and that's the big thing I got out of that. And that's huge because a lot of people, they might not even know um, the simple question of like, oh, who are you, or what is your energy like? Everything in the universe is energy, and we have, again, with these different ways to perceive energy. You can feel it, you can hear it, you can see it, and you can just know it. And I'm interested in all those abilities. They're all natural to all of us. There's not the special few that, oh, this person's the clairvoyant or this person's a medium, and it's just that they're the only ones that have this really awesome, unique ability. We all have these abilities. Um, and the trainings that I went through, and trainings that I teach, can help people start to kind of open up these different abilities. And the big thing I find that really helps when you go through that process, it can be sometimes intense and sometimes overwhelming, but really starting with a strong foundation of being grounded, feeling safe and grounded and just rooted, where you feel like, oh, okay, I feel like I'm at a place where I can really start to open these up and feel okay about that, feel safe about it, and starting to explore these different abilities. And the other thing I find is that having community, having a sense of community, because sometimes, maybe the family that you're born into, or just maybe some of your friends or coworkers or whoever they are, they might not really be into this. They might not be very accepting of this, or they might, who knows. um, but it's nice to be in a community that where everybody's kind of on the same page. They're all just kind of like, yeah, okay, we're a little weird, we're a little different. We're kind of the black sheep, so to speak. um, and just having people to talk to about, oh, okay, hey, I'm having this experience. They might say, oh my god, me too. They have similar experiences. You can share it and not feel like you're going to be judged or invalidated for this. But again, I find all these different abilities that we have, whether it's, again, the feeling, the hearing, the seeing, or knowing of energy, um, communicating with, you know, out of body beings, like, say, spirit guides, deceased loved ones, healing guides, angels, having lucid dreams, out of body experiences. All this is very normal. And this is the stuff that I'm interested in personally, and things that I'm really interested in teaching. Um, so yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about myself, just to give you an idea of more of who I am, kind of where I came from, or where this my journey kind of started. Um, when I was at my school, I ran healing hours where people would come into this large space. Um, and I just kind of set up these different healing exchanges between people. And, I remember when I first got there, it was weird. It was really weird. I had a lot of resistance to it. Just sitting down, I didn't take my energy healing classes yet. So I was only able to receive. And I'd sit down, and someone would be walking around me, kind of waving their hands, and I knew what they were doing. They were working on my energy system, the chakras, channels in the body. They're working on the layers of my aura around my physical body, and it just felt very unreal and weird. But I just knew, I was like, okay, again, I'm in the right place. I know this is exactly where I should be and what I need to be doing. It just felt a little unreal and a little weird, especially when I'm walking. I'm receiving the healing, but I'm also looking at all the other people in the room, waving their hands around, and it's very interesting. And eventually, I discovered why I was resistant towards it. And I cleared that resistance, and I fell in love with healing. I fell in love with receiving healings, giving healings. But again, towards the end of my clairvoyant training, I was starting to kind of lead some of these healing hours, which is a lot of fun. Um, I taught some classes there while I was in my teacher training. But yeah, and then I kind of went on to kind of teach on my own.